Chosen one. You are not here by accident. You did not stumble into this moment. Heaven's clock has been turning quietly, and now the appointed hour has arrived. What you are listening to right now is not random content, it is a signal. A sealed scroll is being touched. A prophetic assignment written before your birth is beginning to stir. Chosen one. There are moments when eternity interrupts time, and this is one of them. You are standing at the edge of a divine unlocking. Something that has been delayed, hidden, or restrained is now ready to unfold. It could begin today, tonight, or in the coming days, but make no mistake, this is Kairos timing. As it is written in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 1, there is a time for every purpose under heaven, and your time has come. Anointed one, what has felt slow, confusing, or out of order was never denial. It was preparation. The vision was waiting for the appointed time, just as Habakkuk chapter 2 verse 3 declares, but now it speaks. Heaven is accelerating what was once hidden. Receive this as a sacred invitation. Let your spirit become attentive. Let expectation rise. Transformation is not approaching, it is activating. Your scroll is opening, your destiny is aligning, and the God who called you is watching this moment unfold with precision. Chosen one, before anything else you need to understand this truth deep in your spirit. The way your life has unfolded was never accidental. The difference you've felt since you were young, the sense of being out of rhythm with the world, the way noise exhausts you, while silence speaks to you, that was not weakness. That was a mark. I want to speak to you plainly now, not as someone above you, but as someone who has walked through confusion, isolation, and unanswered prayers, and lived long enough to see God reveal why. There were years in my own life when I asked God, why do I feel so aware yet so alone? Why do I see things others ignore? Why does my spirit feel heavy in rooms where everyone else is laughing? And for a long time there was no answer, only silence, but silence. Chosen one is not absence, it is incubation. You were not designed to move at the speed of crowds. You were designed to move at the speed of obedience. Chosen one, your sensitivity is not emotional instability. It is spiritual intelligence. Heaven wired you to detect shifts before they manifest. That's why you can walk into a space and immediately sense tension, grief, or deception without anyone saying a word. That's why you feel drained after surface-level conversations, but come alive when purpose, truth, and depth are present. Your spirit recognizes substance because it was trained in hidden places. And yes, your path has been harder, quieter, often misunderstood. That was not punishment. That was preparation. There are assignments God does not give to crowds. There are scrolls He does not open publicly. Some destinies require isolation, not to break you, but to tune you. I've learned this the hard way. If God had explained everything too early, I wouldn't have survived the waiting. So He concealed the purpose while strengthening the vessel. Chosen one. You were shaped in hidden seasons for visible impact. You may have noticed that whenever you try to step closer to God, when you commit to prayer, clarity, or purpose, resistance intensifies. Your thoughts get louder, old wounds resurface, distractions multiply. That is not coincidence, that is confirmation. The enemy does not fight empty vessels. Resistance appears where value is present. I remember seasons where everything in my life felt stalled at once: relationships, finances, direction. It felt like God had paused the world around me. Only later did I understand He was removing noise so I could finally hear Him clearly. Some of the loneliness you've experienced wasn't rejection, it was divine separation. Chosen one. God isolates what He intends to elevate. Your dreams are another sign. Not every dream, but the ones that linger. the ones that feel instructional, symbolic, or heavy with meaning. The ones where you wake up knowing something shifted, even if you can't explain it yet. Those are not random images. That is your spirit receiving data beyond language. Prophetic sensitivity often activates first in the night because the mind is quiet enough to listen. And let me say this carefully, being different doesn't mean being better. It means being assigned. You don't crave attention, you crave alignment. You don't seek applause, you seek truth. That's why superficial success never fully satisfies you. Your spirit knows it was built for eternal impact, not temporary validation. Chosen one. This inner tension you carry, the pull towards something more, is not ambition, it is remembrance. Your soul remembers a calling your mind hasn't fully articulated yet. There's a reason your heart breaks easily for people you don't even know. A reason injustice disturbs you deeply. A reason you feel compelled to pray for others without being asked. Compassion was forged in you through pain. Many of the wounds you didn't choose became the tools you will one day use to heal others. I didn't understand that when I was younger. I resented it. But now I see it clearly. God trains healers by letting them feel deeply. And yes, it gets heavy sometimes. That weight you feel, that's not too much emotion. That's intercession without words. Chosen one. Your sensitivity is a calling, not a burden. If you've ever tried to be normal and failed, if you tried to silence your intuition, numb your awareness, or shrink your depth to fit in, only to feel empty afterward, it's because you were never meant to blend in. Heaven does not waste rare materials on common designs. This is the first truth you must accept before anything else unfolds. You are marked, refined, and positioned for a destiny that requires precision. The vision was written for an appointed time, and as it is written in Habakkuk chapter 2 verse 3, it waits, but it does not forget. Chosen one. This message is not here to flatter you, it is here to awaken you. In the next part, I will show you why the battles intensified, why certain doors closed without explanation, and how those very disruptions were signals that your scroll has begun to open. Chosen one, there is a pattern you may not have recognized until now. Right before clarity comes, pressure increases. Right before direction is revealed, confusion tries to dominate. And right before a divine unveiling, everything that can be shaken begins to shake. This is not chaos. This is transition. I want to slow this moment down with you because this part is deeply personal for you and for me. There were seasons when I thought I was failing spiritually because everything felt harder the more I prayed. The closer I tried to walk with God, the more resistance I felt in my mind, my emotions, even my body. I wondered if I was doing something wrong, but I wasn't. I was crossing a threshold. Chosen one pressure is often the language of activation. You see, when God prepares to reveal what has been sealed, He allows the environment to apply pressure, not to crush you, but to expose what is ready to emerge. Think of how oil is extracted. Think of how diamonds are formed. Rare things are not accessed gently. They are revealed through intensity. That explains why your life has had these strange cycles, periods, where things seem calm, followed by moments where everything feels under attack at once. Relationships strain, finances tighten, sleep becomes restless, old memories surface without warning, your spirit feels alert but unsettled. This is not regression, this is alignment. Chosen one. Heaven does not activate destiny in comfort zones. There is also a reason many of your struggles happened privately. People saw the outcome but never witnessed the wrestling. They saw your composure but not the prayers whispered through tears. They saw you keep going but never knew how close you were to giving up. That hidden endurance is part of your spiritual authority. Authority is not granted by words, it is earned through endurance. I've learned that God often hides his strongest work behind silence. The world celebrates visibility, but heaven values depth. While others were building platforms, you were building roots. While others were chasing recognition, you were being stripped of false identity. It felt unfair at times, lonely. But now you are beginning to understand roots must grow in darkness before fruit appears in light. Chosen one. Your hidden seasons were not delays, they were design. Let's talk about the isolation for a moment, because this is where many chosen ones doubt themselves. There were times you felt disconnected, even when surrounded by people. You could be in a room full of laughter and still feel alone. Not because you are antisocial, but because your spirit was outgrowing certain frequencies. God does not always remove people abruptly. Sometimes he simply makes the connection uncomfortable enough that you can no longer stay. I remember friendships I tried desperately to preserve, even when my spirit was exhausted afterward. I told myself I was being dramatic, but every time I ignored that inner check, peace left. Eventually I realized God was protecting my focus. Some relationships were good, but not aligned. And misalignment, even when harmless, can derail timing. Chosen one. God protects destiny by disrupting attachment. You may also have noticed that jobs, environments, or paths that once felt stable suddenly became suffocating. You tried to push through, but your soul resisted. This wasn't ingratitude, it was discernment activating. When a scroll begins to open, tolerance for misalignment decreases. What you once endured without question now feels unbearable. This is why comparison has been so dangerous for you. You looked at others progressing faster, settling sooner, appearing happier, and wondered why your journey seemed stalled. But what you couldn't see was the weight of your assignment. Heavy callings move slower because they require precision. Heaven does not rush what must last. Chosen one delay is often divine insulation. Another sign you are in a Kairos moment is heightened awareness. You notice patterns more easily. You sense motives behind words. You feel led to pause before decisions others rush into. This discernment is not suspicion, it is refinement. God sharpens perception before he releases influence. And yes, the attacks have been relentless. The enemy does not wait until you fully understand your calling to oppose it. He recognizes spiritual signatures before you do. That's why discouragement has tried to convince you that you're behind, broken, or unworthy. That voice telling you to quit, to settle, to numb yourself, that was never your voice. Chosen one opposition is not proof of failure, it is evidence of threat. I need you to hear this clearly. You are not tired because you are weak. You are tired because you have been carrying something sacred without full understanding yet. Carrying purpose before clarity is exhausting, but clarity is coming. The pressure you feel right now is not meant to last forever. It is the final compression before expansion. Just like the vision spoken of in Habakkuk chapter 2 verse 3, it was appointed for a time, and now the time is approaching. What was written is beginning to speak. Chosen one, you are closer than you think. In the next part, I will speak directly about the gifts that are beginning to surface, how to recognize true activation versus emotional noise, and what obedience looks like in this critical window, because what you do next matters more than you realize. Chosen one. When a sealed scroll begins to open, the first thing God does is not change your surroundings, he sharpens your awareness. Activation does not announce itself loudly. It reveals itself quietly through patterns, impressions, and an inner knowing that grows stronger by the day. This is where many people get confused, so listen closely. Spiritual activation is not emotional hype. It is not constant excitement or dramatic encounters. It is clarity replacing confusion. It is restraint replacing impulse. It is peace standing firm in the middle of uncertainty. When God activates what He placed in you, He doesn't overwhelm your senses, He aligns them. I remember the first time I realized something had shifted in me. Nothing external had changed. My circumstances were the same, but my reactions were different. Things that used to provoke anxiety no longer controlled me. Decisions that once felt rushed now felt measured. I didn't have all the answers, but I had discernment. And discernment, chosen one, is one of the earliest signs of activation. You may be noticing this now. You pause more before you speak. You listen deeper. You feel an internal check when something is off, even if it looks good on the surface. This is not hesitation. This is spiritual governance. God entrusts influence only to those who can steward it. Chosen one, when heaven activates gifts, it first stabilizes the vessel. Another sign is how your dreams are changing. Not necessarily becoming more frequent, but more precise, less chaotic, more symbolic. You may wake up with a strong impression, a warning or a solution that didn't come through logic. Sometimes the dream fades, but the instruction remains. This is because God often speaks to the spirit before the mind can interfere. You might also notice that rest feels different. Sleep may be lighter. Your spirit feels alert even when your body is tired. This is not burnout. This is transition. When destiny begins to align, the spirit becomes attentive. Just remember, rest is still obedience. God does not activate gifts to exhaust you. He activates them to position you. Chosen one, exhaustion comes from striving, not from alignment. Let's talk about the signs around you, because this is where people either become grounded or drift into distraction. Yes, God uses confirmation. Yes, He speaks through timing, repetition, and alignment. But the purpose of signs is reassurance, not dependence. Feathers, numbers, phrases, repeated themes, these are gentle nudges, not instructions by themselves. I've learned that when God confirms something externally, it's because He has already spoken internally. The sign doesn't lead, it agrees. If you are chasing signs but ignoring obedience, clarity will blur. But if you are obeying quietly, confirmations will follow naturally. Chosen one alignment attracts confirmation. Obedience sustains it. You may also feel a growing discomfort with things that once entertained you. Certain music feels empty, conversations feel shallow, content that once distracted you now drains you. This is not judgment, this is purification. God clears spiritual clutter before He releases responsibility. You cannot carry sacred assignments while feeding everything else. I went through a season where I felt disconnected from almost everything I used to enjoy. At first, I thought something was wrong with me, but later I understood God was narrowing my focus. When destiny sharpens, appetite changes. Chosen one, God removes what dulls your sensitivity. Another clear sign of activation is authority in speech, not volume, not force, weight. When you speak, people listen, even if they don't agree. Your words bring calm, clarity, or conviction. Sometimes you don't even realize what you said mattered until someone tells you later. This is not charisma. This is anointing. You may notice that people open up to you unexpectedly. Strangers share personal things. Friends seek your counsel without fully knowing why. This is not coincidence. This is a healing frequency activating. God positions healers where wounds are present often before the healer understands their role. Chosen one, your presence carries assignment before your title ever will. Decision-making is another area where activation becomes visible. You begin choosing with confidence, not because you know everything, but because confusion no longer dominates you. Even when outcomes are uncertain, you feel peace about the direction. This is wisdom rising, not information. And yes, spiritual resistance may increase briefly, not because you are losing ground, but because the enemy recognizes momentum. This is where many people misinterpret pressure as failure. But remember, doors only resist when they are about to open. Chosen one resistance is not the opposite of progress. It is often the proof of it. Now here is the part you must not miss. Gifts do not activate fully through desire. They activate through obedience, small obediences, quiet obediences. The moment you pray when you don't feel like it. The moment you speak truth gently instead of staying silent. The moment you walk away from something misaligned even when it costs you. Every step of obedience unlocks another layer of authority, not instantly but incrementally. God builds trust through consistency, not intensity. Chosen one, obedience is the currency of activation. Some of you are beginning to sense what your assignment may involve: intercession leadership, healing discernment, restoration building. You don't need the full picture yet. You only need to stay yielded. God reveals the next step when the current one is honored. As it is written, there is a season for everything, and this is your season to listen, refine, and align. You are not late. You are not behind. You are on schedule. In the next part, I will speak about the authority tied to your calling, why generational patterns are shifting around you, and how to protect what God is activating right now, because what is opening must also be guarded. Chosen one. There is a reason your awakening feels heavier than inspiration. What is activating in you is not limited to your personal future. It is reaching backward and forward at the same time. When God entrusts authority, He does not do it casually. Authority is never about control. It is about stewardship. And what is being stirred in you right now is connected to lineage. This is why patterns in your family line have been surfacing. Cycles you didn't start but feel compelled to end. Struggles that existed long before you were born, yet somehow landed on your shoulders. Addiction, silence, poverty, mindsets, emotional absence, spiritual confusion. These patterns did not follow you by accident. They followed assignment. I need you to hear this clearly. Chosen one, you were not born into difficulty. You were sent into it. There are people who live their entire lives reacting to what they inherited, and then there are those God appoints to interrupt it. That interruption often begins with awareness. You started asking different questions, wanting more clarity, refusing to normalize what wounded you. That resistance you felt toward this is just how things are. That was authority waking up. I remember the moment I realized I wasn't just dealing with my own struggles, I was confronting a pattern. It explained why progress felt resisted, why peace felt contested, why every step forward felt like pushing against invisible weight. But once I recognized it, everything changed. Awareness doesn't end the battle, but it gives you leverage. Chosen one authority begins when you stop personalizing what was always spiritual. This is why your prayers carry weight even when you feel uncertain. This is why your declarations shift atmospheres before you see results. Authority is not loud, it is recognized in the spirit realm. And the spirit realm responds to alignment, not performance. You may have noticed that when you pray sincerely, not perfectly, just sincerely, things move. Conversations change, tension breaks, insight comes unexpectedly. That is not coincidence. That is inherited authority activating through obedience. And yes, it has required sacrifice. You have had to mature early, discern quickly, walk away from things others indulge in freely. This wasn't because God wanted to restrict you, it was because He trusted you. Chosen one, God guards authority by placing it in disciplined hands. Let's talk about protection, because this is where many chosen ones misunderstand their season. When authority increases, so does coverage. You are not exposed, you are shielded. You may not always feel it emotionally, but spiritually, you are heavily guarded. There are interventions you never noticed, delays that saved you, closed doors that prevented destruction. I can look back now and see moments where things didn't work out, and thank God they didn't. At the time, I was disappointed. Later, I realized I was being preserved. Preservation often looks like disappointment in the moment. Chosen one protection rarely announces itself. It simply redirects you quietly. This is why discernment is so critical right now. Not everyone who has access to you deserves influence over you. Not every opportunity that looks good is aligned. Authority demands boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters. You are being trained to recognize what drains you versus what strengthens you. This applies to people, habits, environments, and even thoughts. What you entertain repeatedly becomes what you empower. Chosen one. You don't need to fight everything. You need to choose wisely what you allow close. You may also notice a growing intolerance for compromise. Things you once justified now feel heavy. This is not self-righteousness, it is refinement. God is aligning your inner world with your external calling. Hypocrisy collapses under authority. Integrity strengthens it. And let me ground this in reality for a moment, because prophetic messages must touch real life to be trusted. Authority doesn't mean you stop struggling. It means struggle no longer defines you. You still feel fear sometimes, but you don't obey it. You still feel doubt, but it doesn't decide for you. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's obedience in spite of it. Chosen one authority is choosing alignment when emotion pulls elsewhere. You are also stepping into a season where your choices ripple outward. People will be impacted by your obedience in ways you may never fully see. Your yes will unlock doors for others. Your discipline will become someone else's permission to heal. This is why heaven takes your decisions seriously. As it is written, there is a time when the smallest becomes a strong nation. Authority multiplies when timing aligns. And timing, chosen one, is aligning now. But with authority comes responsibility. You must protect what God is activating. This means guarding your inner life, prioritizing stillness, not rushing decisions, letting confirmation come through peace, not pressure. If something requires you to betray your integrity, it is not from God. If something demands haste but removes peace, pause. Heaven is never frantic. Chosen one urgency comes from alignment, not anxiety. This part of your journey is about consolidation, bringing your awareness, obedience, and discernment into harmony. You don't need to do more, you need to stay aligned. In the next part, I will speak about provision tied to your calling, why resources often appear after obedience, not before, and how to trust God's economy when stepping into what He has prepared for you. Chosen one. One of the greatest tests in any divine calling is not faith in God's power, but trust in His provision. This is where many anointed lives hesitate, not because they doubt the calling, but because they don't yet see the resources. And I want to speak to you honestly here, not from theory, but from lived experience. There were moments when I knew clearly what God was asking me to do, but nothing around me supported it. No financial safety, no visible backing, no applause. Just a quiet instruction and a question in my spirit. Will you move without guarantees? That question is one every chosen one must answer eventually. Chosen one. God rarely funds what you plan. He funds what He ordains. This is why provision often feels delayed. Heaven does not release resources to ideas. It releases them to obedience. And obedience is proven when you move before everything makes sense. This doesn't mean recklessness. It means alignment. There is a difference. You may have noticed a pattern in your life. Whenever you waited until you felt ready, nothing moved. But when you acted in faith, small, uncomfortable steps, things began to align unexpectedly. A connection appeared, an idea unlocked. Help came from an unlikely source. That is how God's economy works. It does not respond to fear. It responds to faith. Chosen one. Heaven's supply is activated by movement, not certainty. Let's talk about the fear you may be carrying right now. Fear of not having enough. Fear of losing stability. Fear of stepping out and failing. That fear is not shameful. It's human. But it cannot be your guide. When fear leads, calling stalls. I remember standing at the edge of a decision that would change my life, knowing that staying was safer, but also knowing it was misaligned. The logical choice was to wait. The spiritual choice was to move. I didn't feel brave. I felt exposed. But obedience does not require courage first. Courage often comes after obedience. Chosen one bravery is not the prerequisite. Surrender is. This is where many people misunderstand abundance. Abundance is not excess. It is sufficiency in motion. God does not promise you unlimited resources to sit still. He promises provision for the path He has assigned. When you stay in alignment, provision adjusts. You are not called to chase money. You are called to steward purpose. When purpose is honored, provision follows. You may notice that as your calling sharpens, your relationship with resources changes. You become less attached to comfort and more attentive to direction. You start asking different questions, not how much will this cost, but what is this costing me spiritually if I don't obey? Chosen one. Misalignment is far more expensive than obedience. This is also why God sometimes withholds resources until your heart posture is clear. Provision without clarity can corrupt calling. I've seen it happen. People receive influence, money, or opportunity before discipline is formed, and it destroys them. God protects you by pacing your increase. If your finances have felt tight, it doesn't mean God is absent. It may mean He is refining trust. Tight seasons expose what you depend on. They also teach discernment, how to distinguish needs from distractions. Chosen one lack can be a teacher, not a curse. Now hear this carefully. God's economy does not operate on panic. If you move out of anxiety, you step out of alignment. But if you move in peace, even when the path is unclear, heaven backs the step. You will begin to notice something subtle but powerful. When you obey, resources begin to find you. Not always immediately, not always dramatically, sometimes through ideas, sometimes through relationships, sometimes through favor you didn't earn. This is not coincidence. This is orchestration. Your obedience creates space for provision to enter. This is also why generosity matters in this season, not just financially, but energetically. Generosity of time, of attention, of prayer. When you give freely, you align with heaven's flow. Tight fists block circulation. Open hands allow movement. Chosen one, what flows through you multiplies. What you cling to stagnates. You are stepping into a phase where God will test your trust, not by taking things away, but by asking you to move without seeing the full picture. This is not to stress you. It is to mature you. Children need proof. Sons and daughters move on trust. And let me ground this again in reality. Trusting God's provision does not mean ignoring wisdom. It means letting wisdom serve obedience, not replace it. You still plan, you still steward, but you don't let logic overrule calling. There will be moments when provision arrives after obedience, not before. That doesn't mean you misheard God. It means He is teaching you how His system works. Chosen one. God funds obedience in real time. As it is written, when the time comes, the Lord hastens it. Provision accelerates when timing aligns. What felt slow will suddenly move quickly. Doors will open without explanation. Support will appear where resistance once lived. But here is the key you must remember: provision is not the reward. Alignment is. Provision is simply the tool to fulfill what was written. In the next part, I will speak about identity stabilization, why God is solidifying who you are before expanding where you go, and how to remain anchored when your life begins to shift rapidly. Chosen one. Before God expands where you go, He stabilizes who you are. This is a law of the spirit realm that cannot be bypassed. Expansion without identity creates collapse. Influence without grounding creates confusion. That is why, just as things begin to move externally, God often slows you internally. You may feel this happening now. On the surface, it might seem like contradiction. Doors are opening, insight is increasing, momentum is building, yet inside God is calling you to stillness, reflection, and deeper self-awareness. This is not hesitation, this is anchoring. I want to speak to you from experience here. There was a season when opportunities began to appear in my life faster than I could process them. People suddenly saw value in me that they hadn't before. My voice carried weight, my decisions mattered, and yet internally, God kept pulling me back to one question: who are you when no one is watching? Chosen one. Identity must be rooted before destiny is released. God is not just preparing you to receive what is coming, He is preparing you to survive it with integrity intact. Many people lose themselves at the very moment they think they've arrived. They confuse calling with validation. They confuse assignment with applause. And slowly, subtly, they drift from alignment. That will not be your story. This is why God has been stripping false identities from you, roles you played to be accepted, masks you wore to survive, versions of yourself built out of pain instead of truth. It may have felt uncomfortable. You may have felt exposed. But exposure precedes freedom. Chosen one. God removes what is false, so what is eternal can stand. You may notice that old labels no longer fit. Things you once used to describe yourself feel incomplete now. You are no longer defined by your trauma, but you are not pretending it didn't exist. You are no longer driven by fear, but you are still discerning. This is maturity. This is stabilization. Identity stabilization looks like this. You no longer need to prove yourself. You no longer chase validation. You no longer panic when misunderstood. You no longer shrink to keep peace. Not because you've become hardened, but because you've become rooted. I remember the moment I stopped explaining myself to people who had already decided who I was. That was not arrogance. That was peace. When identity is secure, misunderstanding loses power. Chosen one. You don't need everyone to understand you. Heaven already does. This is also why God is teaching you restraint. Not everything you see needs to be spoken. Not every insight needs to be shared. Wisdom knows when to speak, not just what to say. Authority is preserved through discernment. You may feel the urge to withdraw slightly, not out of fear, but out of clarity. Your circle is narrowing. Your focus is sharpening. This is not isolation returning. This is stewardship beginning. God does not give wide influence to unfocused identity. Another sign of identity stabilization is how you handle tension. Where you once reacted emotionally, you now respond intentionally. Where you once internalized criticism, you now filter it. Where you once doubted yourself, you now pause and pray. This doesn't mean you never feel hurt. It means hurt no longer controls your direction. Chosen one stabilization is strength learning to move calmly. Let's talk about humility here, because humility is often misunderstood. Humility is not shrinking, it is accurate self-perception. You know what you carry, but you know who gave it to you. That balance keeps power clean. God is anchoring you in humility, not to limit you, but to protect you. Pride fractures calling. Humility sustains it. This is why God may be keeping you hidden a little longer than you expected. Visibility amplifies everything, gift and flaw alike. Stabilization ensures that when light increases, character holds. Chosen one, hidden time is reinforcement, not neglect. You are also learning to separate who you are from what you do. Your worth is no longer tied to productivity. Your peace is no longer dependent on outcomes. This is critical. Destiny cannot rest on fragile identity. If God took everything external away tomorrow, would you still know who you are? That is the question stabilization answers. And here is the good news, you are answering it well. The fact that you're still here, still listening, still seeking alignment, still choosing obedience, means your foundation is forming correctly. You are not rushing, you are not forcing, you are becoming. Chosen one becoming is more important than arriving. This is also the season where God refines your motives. Why do you want what you're asking for? Is it to be seen or to serve? Is it to escape pain or to fulfill purpose? These questions are not accusations. They are invitations to clarity. Clarity protects destiny. As it is written, there is a time to plant and a time to uproot. God has uprooted false identity, so true identity can take root. And once roots are deep enough, expansion becomes safe. In the next part, I will speak about momentum, how God accelerates suddenly after long preparation, how to recognize when movement has shifted from preparation to execution, and how to move forward without leaving alignment behind. Chosen one. There comes a moment when preparation quietly hands the baton to execution. It doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it comes as a simple inner permission, a knowing that says, now. This is the shift you may be sensing. The waiting that once trained you is no longer the assignment. Movement is. I want to be very clear here, because many miss this transition. They stay in preparation long after God has released momentum. They keep refining what heaven has already approved. They keep praying for clarity when clarity has already arrived. What's missing is courage to act. Chosen one preparation ends when obedience begins. Momentum does not feel like certainty. It feels like alignment with forward motion. You won't suddenly know everything. You will know the next thing, and that is enough. God rarely gives a map. He gives a step. When the step is taken, the ground appears. I remember a season when I kept asking God for confirmation, and He gently asked me instead, "What are you waiting for that I haven't already shown you?" That question changed everything. I realized I was hiding behind wisdom to avoid vulnerability. I wasn't unsure, I was afraid of being seen moving. Chosen. One momentum exposes you. That's why it feels risky. Here is how you recognize the shift. Resistance changes texture. It no longer blocks you, it challenges you. Opportunities appear that require response, not contemplation. Conversations surface that demand honesty. Invitations come that feel heavier than exciting. This is not confusion, this is gravity. Destiny carries weight. Another sign is timing compression. What once took months now unfolds in weeks. What once required explanation now requires decision. The pace increases, but not the peace. If peace remains while pace increases, you are in alignment. Chosen one, acceleration with peace is heaven's signature. You may also notice that procrastination feels more uncomfortable than action. Restlessness increases not because you're anxious, but because your spirit knows it's time. Stillness that once felt nourishing now feels restrictive. This is not impatience, it's readiness. But here is the discipline you must hold: move without abandoning stillness. Execution does not replace prayer, it is prayer in motion. The goal is not speed, it is fidelity. Move at the speed of obedience, not ambition. Chosen one momentum responds to obedience, not ego. Let's talk about fear, because fear doesn't disappear when momentum arrives. It changes shape. Instead of saying, "What if this fails?" it says, "What if this works?" Fear of success is real. Success exposes responsibility. It multiplies impact. It removes excuses. And it asks more of you. I've learned that fear of success often masquerades as discernment. We tell ourselves we're being wise when we're actually protecting comfort. Discernment leads to action. Fear leads to delay. Chosen one discernment clarifies. Fear complicates. This is also where comparison tries one last time to pull you off course. You'll see others moving faster, louder, bigger. You'll wonder if you should adjust your pace or posture. Don't. Your timing is calibrated to your calling. Mimicry fractures authority. Authenticity sustains it. Momentum is personal. It is tuned to your obedience history, your capacity, your assignment. What works for another may crush you or distract you. Stay in your lane. Heaven is watching fidelity, not visibility. Chosen one, you are accountable for obedience, not outcomes. You might feel a subtle urgency now, not panic, but priority. Certain things matter more. Certain distractions lose appeal. Your calendar begins to reorganize itself around purpose. This is healthy. This is focus sharpening. With momentum comes pruning, not punishment pruning. God removes what slows you. This can look like sudden endings, postponed plans, or redirected energy. Don't resist it. Pruning makes room for fruit. Chosen one fruit requires space. You may also feel a new boldness rising, not aggression, conviction. You speak more directly. You choose more decisively. You stop negotiating with misalignment. This is authority expressing itself through action. But remember, this safeguard: never outrun humility. Momentum without humility turns into striving. Humility keeps your steps light and your spirit teachable. Check your heart often. Stay grateful. Stay grounded. I have learned to ask one question in seasons of momentum: am I moving to prove something or to obey someone? The answer recalibrates everything. Chosen one, obedience sustains momentum longer than talent ever will. As it is written, when the appointed time arrives, the Lord hastens it. You are not forcing this. You are responding to it. Heaven has been preparing the road while you were being prepared for the road. Now the two are meeting. Here is your charge in this season. Move when peace leads. Pause when pride whispers. Advance with gratitude. Guard your inner life. Choose alignment over applause. You are not stepping into chaos. You are stepping into orchestration. In the next part, I will speak about partnership, how God brings the right people at the right time, how to discern divine connections from distractions, and how to walk with others without losing your calling, because momentum multiplies through alignment, not isolation. Chosen one momentum was never meant to carry you alone. God does not expand destinies in isolation forever. There is a time for separation, and there is a time for alignment. When momentum shifts, heaven also begins to reposition people around you, not randomly, but intentionally. This is where discernment becomes critical. Not everyone who appears in a season of movement is sent to stay. Some are assigned to open doors. Some are assigned to test clarity. Some are mirrors revealing what still needs healing. And a rare few are aligned to walk with you into what God is building next. Chosen one connection is powerful, but misalignment is costly. I want to speak from experience here because this lesson is learned best through scars, not slogans. There were seasons when I mistook familiarity for alignment. I kept people close because they knew my past, not because they honored my future. And every time I did that, momentum slowed. Not because God withdrew, but because my focus was divided. God does not remove people to punish you. He removes people to protect what's forming. Chosen one alignment honors growth. Familiarity often resists it. As God begins to bring new connections, you may feel cautious, even guarded. That's wisdom, not fear. You've learned that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Discernment doesn't rush intimacy, it observes fruit. Here is how you recognize a divine connection. They don't compete with your calling. They don't rush your process. They don't need you to be smaller. They don't drain your peace. They sharpen your obedience, not your ego. Divine partners don't distract you from God. They draw you closer to Him. Chosen one alignment multiplies clarity. You may notice that conversations with the right people feel grounding, not exhausting. Even when they challenge you, peace remains. Even when they correct you, you feel safe. That is a sign of spiritual compatibility, not emotional convenience. Let me say something important here. Divine partnership does not always mean agreement. It means shared direction. You can disagree and still be aligned. But you cannot move in opposite directions and remain unified. God brings people into your life who can walk at the pace of your obedience. Chosen one pace matters. This is also the season where God teaches you how to walk with others without handing over your discernment. Partnership does not mean surrendering responsibility for your calling. You are still accountable for your obedience. Others can confirm, but they cannot replace your hearing. I've learned that when I began outsourcing my discernment, confusion entered. But when I took responsibility for hearing God while remaining teachable, alignment increased. Chosen one counsel supports calling. It does not govern it. Be careful of connections that require you to compromise clarity for comfort. If you feel pressure to explain away your convictions to keep peace, that peace is false. Real peace does not require silence. It requires truth delivered with humility. You are also being taught how to release people without resentment. Not everyone exits because of betrayal. Some simply complete their assignment in your life. Holding on beyond grace creates friction. Chosen one, gratitude releases without bitterness. As momentum increases, God may also reconnect you with people from your past, but not to relive old cycles. To reveal how much you've grown. The old dynamics no longer fit. That's not arrogance, that's transformation. You don't owe everyone access to who you are becoming. Another sign of divine partnership is mutual strengthening. You don't feel like you're always pouring or always receiving. There is rhythm, exchange, honor. God values balance. He never intended chosen ones to burn out trying to carry everything alone. Chosen one shared load does not mean shared control. You may also notice that certain people appear right when you need clarity, courage, or confirmation, then fade once the purpose is complete. This is orchestration. Don't cling, receive, learn, release. Destiny is a relay, not a possession. And here is a truth many struggle with. Sometimes God will separate you from people you love deeply, not because love is wrong, but because direction is different. Love does not require identical assignments. Jesus himself said that allegiance to calling sometimes disrupts comfort. That doesn't make you cold, it makes you obedient. Chosen one obedience will always test attachment. Now let's talk about unity without dependency. God is teaching you how to walk with others without leaning on them for identity validation or direction. Partnership is healthiest when both parties are anchored independently in God. Two unstable identities cannot sustain shared momentum. You are also learning when to speak and when to stay silent. Not every insight needs to be shared with everyone. Some things are stewarded privately. Wisdom knows audience. Chosen one. Intimacy is selective. Influence is earned. This season is not about building a crowd. It's about building alignment. One aligned voice outweighs 1,000 distracted ones. As it is written, when two walk together, it is because they have agreed not just emotionally, but directionally. Agreement does not mean sameness. It means shared obedience. Here is your anchor in this season. Do not rush connection. Do not fear separation. Do not compromise discernment. Do not isolate in pride. Walk humbly. Walk clearly. Walk aligned. God is positioning people who will not only walk with you, but protect what God is doing through you. In the next part, I will speak about endurance, how to sustain momentum over time, how to guard against burnout and spiritual fatigue, and how to remain faithful when the journey stretches longer than expected, because destiny is not a sprint, it is a calling that must be carried well. Chosen. One momentum is powerful, but endurance is what makes destiny sustainable. Many people can start strong, few learn how to last. This is why God does not only anoint you for movement, He trains you for stamina. What is unfolding in your life is not a short assignment. It is a long obedience carried across seasons, requiring wisdom, restraint, and renewal. Endurance is not about pushing harder. It is about carrying wisely. I want to speak honestly here because spiritual fatigue often disguises itself as faithfulness. There were seasons when I kept going simply because stopping felt like failure. I told myself it was obedience, but my spirit was depleted. God had to teach me a hard lesson. Rest is not retreat. Rest is alignment. Chosen one. Burnout is not proof of devotion. It is often a signal of imbalance. You are learning now that endurance does not come from intensity. It comes from rhythm. God designed your life with cycles, movement and stillness, sowing and waiting, speaking and silence. When you ignore these rhythms, you exhaust yourself trying to sustain what heaven intended to be carried gently. Notice how Jesus moved. He withdrew often. He stepped away from crowds. He rested without guilt. That was not weakness. That was mastery. He understood that power must be renewed in quiet places. Chosen one. Endurance is maintained in secret, not on display. You may feel tired at times, not because you're failing, but because you're carrying weight responsibly. The key is learning the difference between holy tiredness and harmful exhaustion. Holy tiredness comes after obedience and leads you back to God. Harmful exhaustion comes from striving and pushes you away from stillness. Pay attention to where tiredness leads you. If it draws you into prayer, reflection, and restoration, it is safe. If it drives you into numbness, distraction, or resentment, something needs realignment. Chosen one. Endurance requires honesty with yourself and with God. This is also the season where God teaches you how to pace your obedience. Not every instruction is urgent. Not every opportunity requires immediate action. Discernment now includes timing, not just direction. I learned that saying not yet can be just as obedient as saying yes. Waiting is not disobedience when peace confirms restraint. Wisdom grows when you stop reacting and start responding. Chosen one endurance is knowing when to move and when to remain still. Another critical aspect of endurance is emotional stewardship. You feel deeply. That is part of your calling. But feeling deeply does not mean carrying everything personally. God never asked you to absorb the weight of the world. He asked you to be faithful with what He assigned. Compassion without boundaries leads to collapse. Love must be guided by wisdom. You are learning to intercede without internalizing, to care without carrying, to support without sacrificing your own health. This is maturity, not detachment. Chosen one, you are not responsible for outcomes, only obedience. Let's talk about discouragement, because it visits even the most faithful. Discouragement does not mean you lack faith. It means you are human. The danger is not feeling discouraged. The danger is letting discouragement narrate your story. There will be days when progress feels invisible, days when prayers seem unanswered, days when your obedience feels unnoticed. These are the days endurance is forged. I've learned that God often does His deepest work when there is no external evidence. Roots grow underground long before branches appear. If you judge progress only by visibility, you will underestimate what heaven is doing. Chosen one, unseen growth is still growth. This is why gratitude matters so much in this season. Gratitude recalibrates perspective. It reminds you of what God has already carried you through. When you remember past faithfulness, future endurance becomes possible. You didn't come this far by accident. You didn't survive those seasons by chance. God has been consistent even when progress felt slow. Chosen one remembrance fuels endurance. Another endurance key is simplifying your life. Complexity drains energy. God is teaching you to eliminate what is unnecessary. Not everything deserves your attention. Not every battle is yours to fight. Not every voice needs a response. Focus preserves strength. You may feel God inviting you to release obligations that once felt important but now feel heavy. This is not irresponsibility. It is refinement. Destiny requires margin. Chosen one margin is not laziness, it is wisdom. Let's also address spiritual warfare in endurance seasons. Warfare does not always attack loudly. Sometimes it whispers, "Is this worth it? Has anything really changed? Wouldn't it be easier to stop?" These thoughts are not revelations, they are resistance. When resistance becomes subtle, endurance must become intentional. Speak truth to yourself, not emotionally, but faithfully. You don't need to feel strong to stand firm. You need to remain aligned. Chosen one. Endurance is staying aligned when emotion wavers. As it is written, those who wait on the Lord renew their strength. Waiting does not weaken you, it restores you when done correctly. Waiting is not passive, it is active trust. Trust that God sees what you don't. Trust that timing is purposeful. Trust that obedience compounds over time. You are not running behind, you are running with wisdom. In the next part, I will speak about legacy, how what you are building extends beyond your lifetime, how your obedience is shaping future generations, and how to finish this calling with clarity, faithfulness, and peace. Because destiny is not only about arrival, but about what remains after you. Chosen one. Destiny is not measured only by what you achieve in your lifetime. It is measured by what continues to breathe after you. This is the shift God is inviting you into now, a vision larger than milestones, larger than recognition, larger than personal fulfillment. You are being shaped not just to arrive, but to leave something intact for those who come after you. Legacy is not fame. It is faithfulness extended over time. I want to ground this in truth, not romance. There were moments when I thought legacy meant impact at scale, numbers, platforms, visibility. But God corrected me gently. He showed me that legacy begins in private decisions no one applauds. The choice to forgive when bitterness would be easier. The choice to tell the truth when silence would be safer. The choice to stay aligned when compromise would be rewarded. Chosen one legacy is built when obedience outlives convenience. You are not only changing your own story, you are altering the trajectory of people you may never meet. Patterns end when someone decides to stop normalizing them. Futures open when someone refuses to pass down what wounded them. Your obedience is interrupting cycles, emotional, spiritual, and generational. This is why the cost has felt heavy. Breaking cycles requires weight-bearing faith. It asks you to carry what others avoided. It asks you to heal what others ignored. It asks you to confront what others excused. Chosen one cycle breakers always pay a price, but they also create a future. You may not fully see the results yet. Legacy rarely announces itself in real time. It is often recognized in hindsight. The children who grow up safer because of your boundaries. The communities that thrive because you chose integrity. The voices that rise because you modeled courage quietly. I've learned that the most powerful legacies are not loud, they are stable. They create environments where others can flourish without fear. Chosen one stability is a legacy. God is also teaching you to think in terms of stewardship, not ownership. What He gives you, insight, influence, provision, is not meant to end with you. It is meant to flow through you responsibly. This is why humility remains essential. Pride fractures legacy. Stewardship sustains it. You are learning to ask different questions now. Who does this serve? What does this produce long term? Will this still be true when the season changes? These questions protect legacy from impulse. Chosen one wisdom is legacy thinking in the present. There may be moments when you feel unseen, undercredited, or misunderstood. Legacy builders often are. Not because God overlooks them, but because He is anchoring them beyond applause. Applause fades, foundations remain. I remember seasons where I wanted acknowledgement, not for ego, but for reassurance. God reminded me that reassurance comes from Him, not from outcomes. When your identity is secure, recognition becomes optional. Chosen one legacy does not require validation. This is also where patience deepens. Legacy unfolds across time, not timelines. You won't rush what must mature. You won't force what must form. You learn to trust that God is faithful to complete what He begins, even when you don't see the finish line yet. As it is written, there is a season to plant and a season to harvest. You may be planting seeds now that you will not personally harvest. That does not diminish their value, it increases it. Chosen one, sowing without seeing, is the highest form of faith. You are also learning to document wisdom, not necessarily in writing, but in practice. The way you live becomes instruction. The way you handle pressure becomes a lesson. The way you choose peace over reaction becomes a template others will follow. Legacy is caught as much as it is taught. Be mindful of the moments when you are tempted to cut corners just this once. Legacy is preserved in consistency. One compromise may seem small, but patterns begin there. God trusts you with longevity because you have learned restraint. Chosen one restraint protects what ambition can't. Let's talk about finishing well, because finishing matters. Many start with passion. Few finish with peace. God is teaching you to pace your calling so that joy remains intact. Joy is not a distraction from destiny, it is fuel for it. If joy is consistently absent, something needs attention. God does not glorify exhaustion. He glorifies faithfulness with wholeness. Chosen one piece is part of your inheritance. You are not meant to collapse at the finish line. You are meant to arrive steady, clear, and grateful. That requires saying no sometimes. It requires redefining success. It requires listening to God even when the world demands more. Legacy builders know when enough is enough. As your life continues to shift, remember this anchor. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not forgotten. You are positioned. Positioned to leave rooms better than you found them. Positioned to raise standards without condemnation. Positioned to build what lasts. In the next part, I will speak about completion, how God brings clarity to what remains unfinished, how to release regret without losing wisdom, and how to step into the final phases of this calling with confidence and trust, because the God who began this work intends to complete it fully. Chosen one. There comes a sacred point in every calling when God begins to speak less about starting and more about finishing. Not ending, finishing. Completion is not loss. It is fulfillment. It is the moment when scattered pieces begin to form a clear shape and what once felt fragmented starts to make sense. This is where you may find yourself now. Completion does not mean everything is done. It means everything necessary has been prepared. God is not rushing you toward an exit. He is guiding you toward coherence. What was confusing is aligning. What felt unfinished is being clarified. What once carried regret is being redeemed. Chosen one, God completes, He does not abandon. Let's talk honestly about regret, because every chosen one carries it. Regret over time lost. Over decisions made too early or too late, over moments when fear spoke louder than faith. These regrets are not disqualifiers, they are teachers if you allow them to be. I once believed that regret meant failure. God showed me otherwise. He showed me that regret becomes wisdom when it is surrendered instead of rehearsed. The enemy uses regret to paralyze, God uses it to refine. Chosen one wisdom is regret that has been healed. You are learning now how to release the weight of what could have been without dismissing what it taught you. This is maturity. This is completion beginning internally. You no longer live in self-accusation. You live in discernment. Completion also brings perspective. You begin to see why certain doors never opened, why certain prayers were delayed, why certain paths ended abruptly. At the time it felt like interruption. Now it reveals itself as protection. I can look back at moments that once felt like rejection and now recognize them as mercy. Not every open door leads to life. Not every opportunity is alignment. God closed what would have fractured you later. Chosen one hindsight is a gift of completion. This phase also invites reconciliation, not always with people, but with your own story. You stop fighting the narrative of your life. You stop wishing parts of it away. You accept that God worked through all of it, the good, the painful, the confusing. Acceptance is not resignation, it is peace with truth. Chosen one, peace arrives when resistance ends. Another sign of completion approaching is simplicity. Your desires become clearer. You want less, but what you want matters more. You no longer crave complexity or drama. You crave depth, truth, and impact. This is not settling. This is refinement. God simplifies before He seals. You may notice that your prayers have changed. They are less frantic, less transactional, more relational. You are no longer trying to convince God to act. You are listening for how He is moving. Trust has replaced urgency. This is powerful. Chosen one, trust is the language of completion. Completion also requires forgiveness, especially toward yourself. You must forgive the version of you who didn't know what you know now. You must release the expectation that you should have been perfect with partial information. God never expected perfection from you. He expected surrender. Chosen one's self-forgiveness is obedience, not indulgence. There may still be unresolved areas in your life, but they no longer define you. You are no longer rushing to fix everything at once. You are discerning what God is asking you to tend now. Completion does not demand total resolution. It demands faithful alignment. Faithfulness finishes what force cannot. You are also learning how to leave things incomplete on purpose. Not everything is yours to resolve. Not every conflict requires closure. Not every question needs an answer. Some things are released by trusting God to handle what is beyond your assignment. Chosen one, humility knows when to stop carrying what was never yours. Completion does not mean you stop growing. It means growth becomes integrated. Your inner world and outer actions align. There is less contradiction between what you believe and how you live. Integrity settles in quietly. This is why your voice carries calm now, why your presence feels steady, why you don't need to prove yourself. You are becoming whole, not perfect, but whole. As it is written, the one who began a good work is faithful to complete it. Completion is God's responsibility. Your responsibility is obedience. Chosen one, completion is not something you manufacture. It is something you receive. As you step into this phase, here is what God is asking of you. Release what is finished. Honor what remains. Trust what is coming. Stay present. You don't need to rush the ending. You need to walk it faithfully. In the final part, I will speak about consecration, how God seals what He completes, how to remain surrendered as new chapters open, and how to live from this place of alignment without drifting back into striving, because completion is not the end of your journey, but the foundation for what comes next. Chosen one, consecration is what follows completion, not celebration, not striving, consecration. It is the quiet sealing of what God has finished forming in you. It is the moment when you stop reaching for identity and begin living from it. Nothing is forced here. Nothing is rushed. This is where destiny rests, not because it is over, but because it is secure. Consecration does not mean withdrawal from the world. It means clarity within it. You may have expected this stage to feel dramatic. Instead, it feels grounded, calm, clear. There is less urgency to explain yourself, less need to prove direction, less fear of missing out. That is not complacency. That is trust matured. I remember thinking that once God completed certain cycles in my life, I would feel an explosion of emotion. Instead, I felt peace, and at first, peace felt unfamiliar. But peace is the sign that striving has ended. Chosen one, consecration sounds like rest because it is agreement with God. Consecration is not about doing more for God. It is about belonging fully to Him. It is a posture, not a performance. You are no longer asking, "What must I do to be aligned?" You are asking, "How do I remain aligned?" That shift changes everything. You are learning to live with open hands, to hold opportunities lightly, to walk forward without gripping outcomes. This is not passivity. This is stewardship without anxiety. You trust God enough to let Him lead without constantly checking the results. Chosen one, consecration is obedience without tension. This is also where God seals your discernment. You no longer question every decision endlessly. You still seek wisdom, but not validation. Peace has become your confirmation, not excitement, not fear. Peace. When peace leaves you, pause. When peace stays, you move. That simplicity protects your calling. Consecration sharpens sensitivity. You notice subtle shifts, small warnings, gentle nudges. You don't ignore them anymore. You've learned the cost of overriding peace. Now you honor it. Chosen one. Peace is not passive. It is precise. Living consecrated also means resisting the temptation to return to old patterns when pressure rises. Striving may try to resurface. Comparison may whisper again. The desire to control outcomes may knock at the door. Consecration doesn't mean these voices disappear. It means they no longer lead. When pressure comes now, you don't panic. You anchor. I've learned that consecration is proven in pressure, not comfort. Anyone can feel aligned when things are calm. Consecration shows itself when you choose stillness in chaos, truth in confusion, obedience without applause. Chosen one consecration is consistency under pressure. This is also the stage where God trusts you with freedom. Not freedom to drift, but freedom to choose wisely without constant correction. You are no longer led by external rules. You are guided by internal alignment. Freedom without consecration becomes indulgence. Consecration without freedom becomes religion. God has given you both. You are learning to say no without guilt, to say yes without fear, to move forward without dragging the past, to remain present without grasping the future. That is consecrated living. You may also notice that your spiritual language has simplified. You don't need grand words to connect with God. Silence speaks, breath becomes prayer, obedience becomes worship. This is maturity. Chosen one consecration is intimacy without noise. As new chapters open, they will not feel frantic. They will feel natural. Doors will open because alignment attracts access. Favor will rest on you not because you demanded it, but because you carry yourself with humility and clarity. And here is something important. Consecration does not mean you will never struggle again. It means struggle no longer confuses your identity. You know who you are even when the road is difficult. You are sealed not from challenge but in purpose. Consecration also teaches you to wait without anxiety, to trust without timelines, to believe without bargaining. You stop asking God to prove himself. You remember that he already has. Chosen one remembrance sustains consecration. As it is written, those who dwell in the secret place abide not visit. You are no longer visiting alignment. You are abiding in it. This is your dwelling place now. So here is how you live from this place. Stay teachable, stay humble, stay present, stay obedient in small things. Protect your peace, honor your boundaries. Trust God's timing without forcing it. You are not being held back. You are being held steady. Chosen one. Your journey has not been wasted. Every season, hidden, painful, confusing, refining has brought you here. You are not the same person who started this path. You are wiser, quieter, clearer, anchored. And from this place of consecration, God will continue to unfold what he has prepared, not because you are striving, but because you are aligned. You are sealed, you are steady, you are surrendered. And your destiny written before you were born will continue to unfold, not in chaos, but in order, peace, and divine timing. Chosen one, receive this closing word with reverence. What has been sealed is opening. What has been hidden is being revealed. You are standing in your exact Kairos moment, the appointed time written for you on heaven's clock. You are not late. You are not overlooked. You are precisely where prophecy meets fulfillment. May God surround you with divine protection, confirm your steps, and strengthen your spirit as you walk forward in obedience. Remain faithful. Stay aligned. Give thanks in advance for what is about to manifest. If this word bears witness in your spirit, you may quietly affirm it in the comments or share it so another chosen one can awaken. Walk in peace, anointed one. Heaven is with you.